Hello and welcome to Business Today. I'm Siddharth Zarabi and you're watching our continuing coverage on the historic India-European Union Free Trade Agreement. This is a deal that's been almost 2 decades in the making and has multiple ramifications, including not just limited to the geopolitical significance, but the core economic principles that seem to have been baked into this historic deal. It's the biggest of all deals so far in the recent past, and no less than the Commissioner of the European Union herself made this point very tellingly at the World Economic Forum in Davos, where she called it the mother of all deals. And that remark had multiple ramifications, including President Donald Trump also responding and saying that a deal with India would happen very soon. But to discuss the EU deal and the possibilities and the significance of that, I am joined by very noted guest, Anant Goenka, Vice Chairman of the RPG Group and President of the Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry. We are also joined by Mr. Mohan Kumar, former Indian Ambassador to the European Union. We will also be joined by other guests during this conversation. But I want to begin with you, Mr. Kumar, for you to tell our viewers about the broader strategic significance of this trade announcement.
So thank you very much for having me. I think you'll have to look at this deal, first of all, in terms of the sheer scope and breadth of it. I don't think we've had a deal like this. I'm speaking for India. We are talking about, roughly 2/3 of global trade. I'm sorry, 1/3 of global trade, but also 25% of global GDP. So we are talking about an economy which has got 450 million high-income consumers and an economy which is 20 trillion euros. So this is something that India has never done before. That's the first point. The second point I would like to make is the backdrop for this deal is actually the collapse of MFN-based trade in the WTO. Most countries now have signaled to the WTO, and when I say most, United States, EU, China, the big players, they've already said to WTO they don't want to be governed anymore by MFN trade. If that is the case, then India has to really go ahead with its FTAs. We have 5 trading partners with whom we have $100 billion trade or more. And I just want to list them: US, EU, GCC, ASEAN, China. Among these, we have an FTA with ASEAN. China FTA is going to be difficult for obvious reasons. GCC, we have zeroed in on UAE and we have a comprehensive trade partnership agreement. That leaves out US and EU. EU is an important trading partner. It's got heft and it's extremely important in terms of the geopolitical convergence that we have with EU. This is in terms of a resilient multipolar global order, which they have announced in the joint statement, shared values of democracy, pluralism, etc. So, frankly, we need the FTA with EU and we need a bilateral trade agreement with the United States. Getting the EU out of the way is, I think, the best thing that can happen in the new year for the Indian economy and for India's trade policy.
A quick follow-up before I go to my other guest. Mr. Kumar, does this announcement today actually increase the likelihood and chances of the United States finally moving on the deal, which we learn the paperwork for which is supposed to be pending on President Trump's desk?
I would actually not make a direct causal connection. This is something a lot of my colleagues have said. I would like to believe that we need an FTA with EU and a trade agreement with US. The reason I say it is because 40% of India's GDP is international trade. If you want to be a 10 trillion economy, you cannot do it on the back of just some small deals here and there. You need EU, you need US, you need GCC. So I hope what you say is true, that it makes the bilateral trade agreement with US more likely. Last point, there is a fundamental difference between a free trade agreement and just a bilateral trade agreement. I don't have the time to get into the details because we don't have the time. A free trade agreement is legal under the WTO and is an exception to Article 1, which is MFN, whereas a bilateral trade agreement is not. I don't want to get into it, but basically, there is a difference in the kind of agreements that we are negotiating with EU and the US. Your audience should know that.
That's a very, very important point. And many countries, including South Korea most recently, have understood the difference between a proper legal pact and something that is done bilaterally. We are also joined by Rajendra Abhyankar, former Indian ambassador to the European Union. Welcome to the show, Mr. Abhyankar. But before I come to you, I have to go across to a representative of Indian industry for his comments on that. Anant Goenka, coming to you, from your perspective, explain to us what is the significance of the deal that has been announced.
Is a huge deal for India. The size and scale of the deal is unprecedented. $6 trillion of imports is what is being done by the EU. India comprises of only 3% of that opportunity today. So it just shows the potential of growth of exports from India over time. Second is India has moved from signing deals with the developing world more towards the developed world, where there is a lot of complementarity that is there. So our labor intensive sectors, shoes, textiles, apparels, leather products, that will provide huge employment opportunity for our people. And for us as consumers, there will be an opportunity in areas such as spirits and wines and maybe the automotive sector as well. So it's a great win-win deal with high complementarity between both the countries.
Important point there, Anand, but let's quickly tune into what Prime Minister Narendra Modi is saying right now. Let me request our producers to try and bring up the Prime Minister's press conference that's on your screens now.
और आप जैसे बिजनेस लीडर्स इसके कर्ता भी हैं और लाभार्थी भी। फ्रेंड्स, अब समय है कि हम इस साझेदारी को होल ऑफ द सोसाइटी पार्टनरशिप बनाएं। इसी सोच के साथ हमने आज एक व्यापक एफटीए पूरा किया है। इसे भारत के लेबर इंटेंसिव उत्पादों को यूरोपियन यूनियन मार्केट में इजी एक्सेस मिलेगा। इसमें विशेष तौर पर टेक्सटाइल, जेम्स एंड ज्वेलरी, ऑटो पार्ट्स और इंजीनियरिंग गुड्स शामिल हैं। फ्रूट्स, वेजिटेबल्स, प्रोसेस्ड फूड और मरीन प्रोडक्ट, उसमें नए अवसर बनेंगे। इसका सीधा लाभ हमारे किसानों को, हमारे मछुआरों को मिलेगा। हमारे सर्विस सेक्टर को भी इससे फायदा होगा। विशेष रूप से आईटी, एजुकेशन, ट्रेडिशनल मेडिसिन और बिजनेस सर्विस लाभान्वित होंगे। फ्रेंड्स, आज ग्लोबल बिजनेस में बड़ी उथल-पुथल है। हर कंपनी अपनी मार्केट स्ट्रेटेजी और पार्टनरशिप को नए सिरे से देख रही है। ऐसे समय में यह एफटीए बिजनेस जगत के लिए एक साफ और सकारात्मक संदेश है। यह दोनों पक्षों की बिजनेस कम्युनिटी के लिए सक्षम, भरोसेमंद और फ्यूचर ओरिएंटेड पार्टनरशिप बनाने का स्पष्ट निमंत्रण है। मुझे पूरा विश्वास है कि आप सभी इस एफटीए के अवसरों का पूरा लाभ उठाएंगे। फ्रेंड्स, भारत और यूरोपियन यूनियन की कई प्राथमिकताओं की उसको आपके बिजनेस पार्टनरशिप के भी लाभ मिल सकता है। मैं इस संदर्भ में 3 प्राथमिकताओं की बात करूंगा। पहला, आज विश्व में व्यापार, टेक्नोलॉजी और क्रिटिकल मिनरल्स को वेपनाइज किया जा रहा है। हमें साथ मिलकर अपनी निर्भरताओं को डी रिस्क करने की आवश्यकता है। क्या हमारी बिजनेस कम्युनिटी मिलकर ईवीज, बैटरीज, चिप्स और एपीआईज में बाहरी निर्भरता घटा सकती है? क्या हम भरोसेमंद सप्लाई चेन का साझा विकल्प खड़ा कर सकते हैं? दूसरा, भारत और यूरोपियन यूनियन दोनों का फोकस डिफेंस इंडस्ट्रीज और फ्रंटियर टेक्नोलॉजी पर रहा है। मेरा आपसे आग्रह है कि आप डिफेंस, स्पेस, टेलीकॉम और एआई जैसे क्षेत्रों में साझेदारी बढ़ाएं। तीसरा, एक क्लीन एंड सस्टेनेबल फ्यूचर दोनों की प्राथमिकता है। ग्रीन हाइड्रोजन से लेकर सोलर एनर्जी और स्मार्ट ग्रिड, हर क्षेत्र में हमें ज्वाइंट रिसर्च और इन्वेस्टमेंट बढ़ाना चाहिए। दोनों इंडस्ट्रीज को मिलकर स्मॉल मॉड्यूलर रिएक्टर्स और सस्टेनेबल मोबिलिटी पर भी काम करना चाहिए। इसके साथ साथ वाटर मैनेजमेंट, सर्कुलर इकोनॉमी और सस्टेनेबल एग्रीकल्चर हर क्षेत्र में मिलकर।
All right, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, they're addressing business leaders and highlighting three specific areas where he expects industry to follow up on what is now really policy in the making. Ambassador Abhyankar, I'm coming to you. I have asked my other guests this question, but from your perspective, what is the single most important, or couple of them, takeaways that you see are significant from this announcement today?
Thank you very much. I'm quite happy to see that my colleague Mohan Kumar is also on the show. I wanted to say that basically, let me start by saying that this mother of all deals, as Ursula von der Leyen calls it, it is, I had not thought that we would actually reach this point, because the negotiations or the whole idea of an India-EU agreement started when I was ambassador to the EU in 2004 and 2005. So it has been really 2 decades in the making. And as Mohan in some other context has also spoken on the same thing, basically saying that the entire conditions of international trade have changed in these last 20 years. So in fact, the World Trade Organization has collapsed, and so has the most favored nation, which governed the relations between countries. So in this scenario, I think the India-EU trade agreement underwent a lot of international vicissitudes in order to be able to get to a conclusion. The second problem has always been that we have been very cussed in a way on certain products that we were not prepared to give up on, and particularly in liquors and wines and so on. From that was a long-standing sticking problem. The second was, of course, the import of automobiles from the EU. I see that in both cases, after 20 years, we have been able to find a way to agree on this, on these two conditions.
Ambassador Abhyankar, just to interrupt you there, what do you think has led to this change in heart and change in strategy, especially on these so-called politically sensitive items?
I think the reason for this change in strategy, number one cannot rule out the fact that we are feeling a little bit left out, if you want, one can say that, because whatever we say, the question is that we need to have also an agreement with the United States, and that has not gone anywhere. I just hope that it doesn't take 20 years like it took with the EU. But that has been one major problem in a certain loss of confidence, self-confidence in getting deals done. So from that point of view, I think this is a really big deal, not just in terms of what it contains, but also in terms of re-establishing the, the strength that we hold. And I was just looking at the fact of the US reaction to this agreement, and I find that they are fuming and finding reasons why the agreement should not have happened. So I think we can disregard all that. I believe that we
Yeah,
have done an excellent deal. Sorry?
I was meters away, pretty much from where President Donald Trump, in response to a question, said that there would be a trade deal with India, and this was at the World Economic Forum in Davos. So obviously, and that statement came after the EU Commissioner had promised the mother of all deals. At this stage, let me also welcome on the show Manjeet Puri, former Indian ambassador to the European Union. Viewers, we have three of the best and the brightest diplomats of this country who have dealt with the European Union. So, Mr. Puri, that same very question to you, with this additional input, really, does the handshake between Brussels and Delhi send signals to Washington?
Thank you very much. Look, I don't know about signals to Washington, but I want to say thank you, Washington. You know, we've been at this agreement for 20 years. I was myself part of the negotiating team for more than 3 years. But sometimes, as they say, some kind of external push makes all the difference, which is fine. Frankly, I have absolutely no problem in saying thank you very much, Mr. Trump. You've done us a favor, you've done the Europeans a favor, and possibly you've done the world a favor. The rest is up to you. You can play games, we can play games too. Why do I think this agreement is important? You know, I have my dear colleague, Ambassador Mohan Kumar there, my senior Ambassador Abhyankar there. I don't want to go into the nitty-gritties of the trade deal. The Europeans are our largest partner in goods. But on the other hand, we are small players in global trade. The Europeans are a very large economy and large players. But what does this agreement actually do? It provides a massive signal to European industry that India is open for trade. You invest in this country, they have money, they have technology. You invest in this country, you can sell in this market, but you can also build supply chains, you can do a lot of it. So a few little points to you in general. You know, we've always had lower costs of production, but these were offset by lower productivity, poor infrastructure, and tariffs. Now, if at least one of them goes down, it provides a kind of segue for industry in Europe, who are also looking around for other places. They also realize that it's not the United States and only China. Let's look at other players. And for me, this deal, the greatest thing about its signaling is that acknowledges by the European Union that India is a country of significance and important place, and by us a signaling that, look, we need partnerships for becoming Viksit Bharat.
Okay, since you brought up the subject of industry, let me get another comment in from a member of industry who's here with us. Anant Goenka, I'm coming to you again, and you know, it's clear that we have done several other deals, particularly in the recent year and a half, and there's been a sense of urgency that's crept into our trade engagement with the world after several years of hiatus, frankly. But from a trade industry point of view, India Inc. point of view, what's the broader picture that you can share with us in terms of what is on offer for India Inc.? Anant.
6 to 8 months or 1 year's time, we've signed FTAs or various trading agreements with at least 5-7 countries, this being, of course, the biggest one. And this gives an opportunity for a lot of the industries to now look at redrawing their geopolitical or global export maps. I think these are very long-term agreements. They get phased over a period of time. And particularly, as I said, the high employment opportunity areas will greatly benefit out of this deal particularly. So I think it's really up to us businesses now to leverage that opportunity and multiply that trade deal opportunity that is there.
Okay. Mr. Mohan Kumar, I'm coming to you. There are already comments and concerns which is fair because the fine print will be read, reread, and there are 5 to 6 months left in the actual kickoff and implementation. But for the benefit of our viewers, from your perspective, what have we given away and what have we gotten from what you have read so far in terms of the documentation and the details released by both sides?
So what we have secured by way of access is industries and sectors where there is labor intensivity or which are labor intensive. I'm extremely conscious of that because frankly, we have a situation, at least in some sectors, where there is jobless growth. So you need jobs. And so if you are able to secure effective market access in leather, textiles, garments, gems, jewelry, your marine exports, your toys, and so on, you will have some labor benefits, and that cannot be really calculated even in dollars and cents. That is extremely critical. Second, I made the point earlier, and I will make it again. I don't think FTAs now are a matter of choice. They're a matter of necessity. You have only 5 partners with which you have trade of $100 billion or more. And that is US, EU, ASEAN, China, and European Union. So you have an FTA with ASEAN. We have had an FTA with United Arab Emirates. China is out of the question. It leaves you US and EU. So I would argue that an FTA with EU is actually a necessity because EU is entering into FTAs with Vietnam. They've already concluded one. They've concluded an FTA with Mercosur. Indian exports will become more and more uncompetitive if you do not conclude an FTA with EU, which is why I say that I don't think this was so much a matter of choice as actually a matter of national interest. You have to get access to the EU market, and the only way you can get access in the current multilateral trading scenario is through FTAs. So that is the first point I'd like to make. My second point is what we have lost. I'll tell you what we have lost. First, I think our industry will be forced to become competitive. I don't think this is a loss at all. I think the Indian private sector needs to face competition, needs to become competitive, which is why we have done tariff rate quotas. And this opening up of the economy has not been a complete, one-way street. It will be done in a calibrated fashion. So if duties come down for automobiles, they will happen over a period of time, and they will only happen for a certain quantity of vehicles. I've read the figure 200,000 vehicles over 5 years. But whatever the statistics is, it's not going to happen tomorrow. So the Indian auto sector will be able to compete. And I think they should compete. Similarly, on wines, for God's sake, what is it that you are protecting? You're protecting the Indian alcohol industry? Give me a break. I think there has got to be a kind of trade-off. The kind of concessions I'm going to get in the areas of leather, textiles, gems, jewelry are way more important than refusing access to French wine because you want your alcohol producers to prosper. What kind of a logic is that? So I think on the whole, my sense is it's a good deal. We now have to do the hard part, which is carry out deep, profound, difficult reforms so that, as my colleague said, we need to get more and more EU investment into India, and that can happen only if your economy is open and if you carry out the difficult structural reforms that are necessary.
Okay, since the subject of automobiles came up and we have Anant Goenka with us, let me try and go across to Anant Goenka for a quick comment on this. Auto stocks, by the way, reacted post this news because of these concerns, but the fine print may actually warrant more introspection rather than a knee-jerk reaction on the markets. But Anant, do you think there is a issue or a challenge that is posed to OEMs and to the sector over time on account of the provisions that are now being discussed?
automotive industry has matured a lot over the last few years. You look at our key auto players, they are no less than the world's best in terms of design. There is a big change that is happening with respect to electrification. We are in the forefront of electrification as well. So to that extent, the quality of the products that we are using, whether it is mass market or even amongst the premium products, we're at a very strong position in terms of our own in-house R&D and manufacturing capability. I think not only should we not worry about import of cars into India, but I think even the export of cars out of India presents a great opportunity for us, whether it is with the EU or with any other country that we are signing with.
Ambassador Abhyankar, that's the response from Indian industry. I want to ask you a broader question. I'm wondering whether the 3-4 decade old multilateral world trade order, which had a principle of most favored nation, in terms of these deals, is there like an end game that we should try and understand that if all nations try preferential trade deals, FTAs, formal, documented, cast in stone type of agreements with each other, is this a net zero game? Eventually, if everyone offers concessions to each other, what happens? I am at a loss to understand the evolving shape of world trade, sir.
Well, on the multilateral trade system, basically it is not functioning the way it should have under the WTO. That is the problem. And that is why most countries are actually getting into what are called plurilateral deals of different kinds, which need where different parties agree with themselves. But I wanted to make two broader points. One is that this India-EU agreement is definitely going to help the manufacturing sector in India. And the fact remains that our manufacturing sector does not contribute as much as 25%, which is what the economists have said it must be. So in order to improve our manufacturing, I think the India-EU deal will be very useful. Secondly, a broader point is that the India-EU deal will be operational only in early 2027. Between now and 2027, we have to actually get all our eggs in one basket and ensure that we properly brief the India delegation in the European Parliament, which will consider this agreement, and we see that we have taken all the precautions with the major EU countries in order to see that there is no hiccup. Because from my experience in the EU, it is a very slow-moving structure, and while Ursula von der Leyen and the President of the Council have been very positive about wanting to do this, we can treat them as our support. But it will go down to firstly ensuring that the text is properly vetted, which means our ambassador in Brussels and his people have to work with those who are going to be addressing this problem. And similarly, on the PR side, but also on the more fundamental side, it's important that we look at how we can brief the India delegation and also in the European Parliament, which of course sits in Strasbourg, in order that we don't get any hiccups between now and 2027.
Okay. Ambassador Mohan Kumar, I want you to explain to our viewers what is the ratification process, because the European Union has in its fact sheet that it put out explained that there will be a legal revision, then it will be translated into pretty much 27 different languages that are spoken in the EU bloc. I just want to understand, is there a chance for any member state to either scupper, if not the whole deal, but seek revisions to this? Because in our system, our Indian system, there is no ratification clearly. This will not go through the legislative process in India. It is executive decision. Explain to our viewers how will it pan out in the EU, and are there any sort of possibilities of a slip between the cup and the lip.
So, as my senior colleague, Ambassador Abhyankar said, the EU is a slow moving body and things can get complicated. But fortunately, there is good news. The reason why we have three separate negotiations with the EU, one is an FTA, which we have concluded, and there is one which is ongoing on investment and one on geographical indications, which is ongoing. The reason why it was divided into three is concerns a particular word in the EU lexicon, which is called competence. The exclusive competence of the Commission is restricted only to trade. Both investment and GIs and others fall in the category of mixed competence. Thank God the FTA is not mixed competence, because if it were to be mixed competence, then it would have to go to the individual parliaments of 27 countries, and that would take an inordinately long time. As far as this FTA is concerned, the process is straightforward, but I agree there could be hiccups. What you need is only two more important steps. One is legal scrubbing, which is a very routine thing, normal thing, but it will take some time, 4 to 5 months. Then it is only for the European Parliament to approve this deal, and my understanding is the process stops there. It does not go to the individual parliaments, because this FTA is the exclusive competence of Brussels or the Commission, which is why it's being signed by Ursula von der Leyen and Antonio Costa. If it had concerned
Ambassador Kumar, quick interjection as we near the end of the show. I was reading that Turkey seems to be having problems with this. You know, they've some commentators have gone. I mean, is that a potential trouble spot?
No, for the simple reason the European Parliament is not required to do this by unanimity or consensus.
Okay.
There are qualified voting procedures. Some countries may have a problem, but I don't think there are enough countries, shall I say, to block the deal. I hope I'm right. But as far as the process is concerned, I am clear. It is for the Parliament to approve this, the European Parliament, and then this is through. That is my sense.
All right. One final comment from Ambassador Abhyankar. Sir, I come back to the US trade deal, and I was in Davos, and of course not present physically right at the spot when President Trump responded with a quick answer, or when the EU Commissioner spoke, but I felt the ripples, so to say, in the room. I mean, apart from President Trump's presence, the mother of all deals actually was one of the biggest news announcements that was noticed in Davos, and Davos was full this time. Sir, how is Washington likely to respond to this development today here in Delhi?
Well, it is difficult to actually predict how Washington will respond, because most of it depends on how Mr. Trump reacts. But for the present, the only reaction we have got is from the US Treasury Secretary, Mr. Scott Bennett, who says that now the Indians are importing Russian oil, processing it, and then selling that to the Europeans. So the Europeans are actually allowing India to do this to ensure that they are fighting their own war in this way, which means they are fighting against themselves. But I think that is the only comment. But I don't see, unless Mr. Trump uses his normal penchant for imposing tariffs of some kind on the EU, because I doubt if he's going to impose any more tariffs on us. But I just wanted to clarify about the European Parliament. Mohan is right that it will only happen at the European Parliament. But when I mentioned Indian delegation, what I meant was that in the European Parliament, there are members of the European Parliament who opt to join a kind of a group. You can call it an Indian group of members of the European Parliament. That's what they call delegation in that. So those are the people who need to be briefed by our people about where the concerns are, because the European Parliament in many ways is an important body now. And there, the voting in the European Parliament does not take place country-wise, but it takes place according to the political formations in different countries. For example, I mean, people who belong to a Labour country, a Labour party in the UK, not UK, but any other country which has a Labour party, the other Labour parties within the EU will all join together and vote like that. So you have to actually keep briefing the India delegation or the Indian group in the European Parliament, so that because
All right.
the group will comprise of different political parties within the Parliament, so that they are able to brief them about what our concerns may be. Because I believe that this next 6 months is going to be pretty crucial for us to ensure that there is no hiccup that comes up in the middle.
Viewers, look at how the pendulum has swung between January 2025 and January 2026 on India-US relations, global trade, how tariffs were used, geopolitics, strategic concerns, Greenland, Venezuela, Russia, Ukraine. I mean, the potpourri is immense. Even seasoned diplomats would have had some time that they would have taken to figure it all out. But I think at least as far as the EU and India are concerned, we have figured it out finally after 20 long years. There is of course the last mile to complete, but clearly from what our experts have been telling us on the show, it is pretty much a done deal. As I conclude, I want to bring up another important and seminal development that has occurred, because the point about manufacturing, defense, security and strategic cooperation also came up, and that's also part of the conversation that we have had with the EU and announced in the formal statement subsequently, is an agreement by the Adani Group with Brazil's Embraer, and significant one for aircraft manufacturing in India. Now Embraer, regional transport champion, 50 odd Embraers that are currently in use and more in India, and Adani Defense and Aerospace Director Jeet Adani spoke about this deal today that was unveiled earlier today. Let's take a quick listen into what he had to say.
Aircraft designed for shorter routes, making flying accessible, affordable and reliable for millions of new passengers. These aircraft will ensure that no part of India is too distant to be reached and no dream too far to be pursued. The Adani Group brings India's entrepreneurial spirit, industrial scale and commitment to innovation. And Embraer brings decades of experience in regional aviation, proven technology and a global reputation for excellence. Together, I'm sure we will create a synergy that not only serves India, but positions our countries as a hub for regional aircraft production and export to the world. This initiative will generate thousands of jobs, nurture skills, and create a resilient ecosystem of suppliers and innovators.
So all this euphoria around the EU trade pact, it's clear that specific steps and industry activity is significant to realize the potential of these agreements, and you saw that small slice of what Jeet Adani had to say on that significant development, because regional aviation, the UDAN scheme, viewers, as you might recall, and as more and more Indians take to the air, it is important to have a Atmanirbhar Swadeshi system, because for aircraft our dependence is complete on foreign manufactured planes, and if we were to do anything to reduce that dependence, it would be absolute net positive for India, for our economy and for Atmanirbharta in a world that is deglobalizing, that is splintering, and where pretty much everyone is being left to their own devices. With that, it's a wrap on this discussion on the India-EU trade deal. I thank all my guests for their time with us today, and you, the viewer, will be back with more. Until then, do stay tuned in.